Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we are chatting with Shane and Angie Saunders about breathing and breathwork and how we can use this to ground ourselves and control our emotional states. Shane and Angie also share about some of the relationship hurdles that they have tackled and overcome and how inner work has helped them to do that. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we're welcoming Shane and Angie Saunders, founders of Breathe Me. They are award-winning authors, executive breathing coaches, international speakers, and host of the Breathing Edge podcast. Shane and Angie Saunders are qualified executive breathing coaches who founded their company Breathe Me to help busy professionals feel better naturally. With Shane's 13 years experience in the Australian Defence Force and Angie's Hollywood background, these two share a passion for the principles of high performance in high pressure environments. For over a decade, Shane and Angie have worked with some of the most influential entrepreneurial players, CEOs and executives in simple techniques that work to lower stress, improve sleep and stabilize energy throughout the day. Together, they are committed to equipping leaders with on-the-go tools needed to show up for their best, for the business and most importantly for their families. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So we understand that you're husband and wife business partners. So can you just give us a quick snapshot of your own relationship?
Yeah, sure.
Quick snapshot.
It's good. Good place to start.
It's great now. It wasn't all so great. I'm sure as you've probably been through that. I think for me, the biggest thing is because, at that time in our life when we first got together, I moved from Hollywood to Frankston, Victoria. So it was like a big move for me to get used to like going from Northern Hemisphere to Southern Hemisphere, knowing lots of people to knowing like no one.
Yeah.
And then getting married and having a baby all within 18 months. So it was very wild for me trying to figure out what it is I want. And then when we got into business together, it was like, I had baby and I would get reactive really easily. And then Shane, he's natural military accountability and me high reactive and sensitive was a perfect storm for like, how the hell are we going to do this for the long term? That's a really good explanation of it.
Very
Yeah.
good,
And then over the years, it was just like, I think what we kept coming back to is what are we doing this for? Removing the emotions out of it and going, okay, well, the greater plan here is to build up our wealth profile, is to be able to create an income for our family and not have to worry about it. And keeping those things in mind, understanding that we're all here for the greater good, and then we each have an individual commitment to ourselves to always be doing the work.
Yeah, I think if I zoom forward to where we are now, and it's easier sometimes to look back on where we've come from, a couple of things jump out for me. I totally agree with all the difficulties that Angie sort of put forward there about what we had to overcome, but those obstacles and adversity were the very foundation of building to where we are today. If you're not prepared to go into adversity in your relationship and also being in business as well, I think that you don't get an opportunity to learn these lessons. The great thing about where we are today and where we've come from in being able to work together is that having shared values and goals is an amazing thing, especially when you can share them with the person that you're living with, right? It removes a lot of difficulties about where you spend your energy as a couple, right? How you structure your life and your home life as a couple as well. Yeah. And, some people may look at it as being, wow, you often hear people say, how can you do that? And I think to myself, do you have the relationship that you need to have to be able to do that? If someone's saying, how do you do that? So I think that you have a unique opportunity also to really bring out some of the shadow sides of yourself, because if you're not in an intimate relationship in that capacity, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to get things out that need to come out. We're a big fan of Carl Jung's work and, looking at processing the shadow self. And often with a partner, you get a unique opportunity to work that stuff out, given that you can both stand in the face of each other's, secrets and all the dark stuff that when you do express that with each other, you kind of go, oh yeah, I was really worried about telling you that or expressing that to you. And if you can hold space for each other and go through the understanding process, then there's a real I guess a unity and an experience that you have with being with somebody that you don't get to have if you're in and out of relationships or things like that. So I think it's just a very special experience.
It's transparent communication.
That you get to get. Yeah.
So how long have you, that beginning turbulent, crazy beginning 18 months, how long ago was that?
That was 2000. I moved here in 2008. Mm-hmm. So close to 13 years ago.
Yep.
And 12 and a half years ago, actually, because it was August. And then we got married within 6 months of me moving out here, and then pregnant 6 months after that, and then baby came. So those first 2 years were very up and down, and 3 years especially were extremely turbulent.
I think also, just to give it context, everybody's relationships are going to be different, right? There's going to be some things that are going to be a similar experience. Pre-coming up to meeting each other, we both had kind of an epiphany about getting to a certain stage in your life where, I was 28. I was going through what I look at now as a transition from going from a child to an adult, really. I think that transition when you get to the end of your 20s is really a transition about, okay, psychologically you have to grow up now, or you might be forced to grow up or whatever it is, but you're kind of making that transition, and
your frontal lobe is now fully developed.
And I think evolutionary, there's some things that happen. The body comes out of a juvenile stage as well. Like we've kind of looked back on some of the science of it. But I think we'd both gone through that period. Like I'm 5 years older than Angie. So, it just so happened to work out that we were kind of transitioning. So at the beginning of our relationship, we had a very, it was a pressured thing because I was overseas, we met overseas, but we were able to have this situation where we kind of got a lot of our stuff out up front. Like we kind of sat for a couple of nights when we were together and kind of went, this is how I've sabotaged stuff in the past. Like this is the kind of relationships I've had. And, like for me, we kind of forget that people don't have that, not the level of honesty, but they would not usually start a relationship with, hey, this is how I've sabotaged things in the past, or this is what's gone wrong for me, and having the maturity to listen to each other and not sort of go, oh, la, 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 I don't want to hear about your ex-boyfriends, or I don't want to, I had felt like that in previous relationships where I was like, ooh, I don't want to hear about, what your past endeavors or relationships were. So I think that was an important catalyst for us then to kind of not shortcut, but get into a relationship very quickly where we knew this is something that we can really make work. Like we can make this relationship work, and then of course, as it developed, there are definitely peaks and troughs, right? Like it wasn't all roses and chocolates from that moment on. There was
it sounds very romantic. Me, get all your shit on the table.
It was
move countries, whirlwind romance.
It was very good. It was it fed my soul because I had the opportunity to share all of my mess ups. So I was engaged twice before I even met this one. So my family is like, let me know.
We're not even sure if this is actually going to happen.
Come out if the wedding's actually still on, I was like, oh, okay. So we got eloped and then we had the wedding the next year. So they knew that we were in there.
You were locked in.
We were in it for the long term. Yeah.
Correct.
That's actually the first thing he said when I came into Sydney. We got into our hotel room and he like jujitsu held me and threw me on the bed and was like, you're not going anywhere.
I've got you.
Yeah. But I think that's really important, though, is that Shane and I had the ability to make a lot of mistakes before we met. In fact, 3 months before we met, I said to my mum, I'm done. I'm ready for a big change. And then 3 months later, I met him. He's like,
you put it out there.
Yeah, and I only knew him like a month or 2, not even.
Yeah,
and he's like, come to Australia. I'm like, I'm coming.
I think, in hindsight, understanding what functions sometimes that you govern by, intuition, thinking, feeling, sensing, these sorts of things that people often hear in personality tests. I think it's important that you do understand, are you an intuitive type person or are you a person that feels a lot? Because that will help you to understand and check in with those, not only the prime modality that you use, but also the auxiliary ones. So matching that against logic, how does this, how do things logically work? So I think that in hindsight, we got to that stage very early where we knew what we knew. We knew that it was the truth for us that we were going to make this work. And so we were both very committed to making it work. And
I had my doubts.
Yeah, look, I mean,
we all do.
We all do. I mean, we'll get into this a little bit further, but, there's been times where the attraction has totally dropped out of the relationship for me, where I'm like looking at Angie going, is this as good as it gets? And having an awakening to that, to well, I'm locked into this. Is this it? And trying to understand things about desire and things about sex and things about all of these different things. So, it is something that it pays to have a certain level of awareness of yourself to be able to put that together into an intimate relationship and then understand that this is really a journey of you discovering yourself, taking care of your own stuff, being able to express to each other what works and what doesn't, and being very, very honest about what your withholds are, why you're trying to control each other. We've been through all these things around sex, around children, like having our first daughter was an experience because...
Not sex around children, just... Because the way that it came out was not a got you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Separate activities.
Yes. Thank you for clearing that up. But these were all pivotal for my experience, and Angie will be slightly different. But if I look at my experience, there was, it hasn't been. We had this amazing beginning, and then it was amazing.
It was easy
since then.
and dreamy.
Exactly. Exactly.
There was a few doors slamming for sure.
Yeah, it was.
I threw toast at him.
Oh, good. At least it was toast and not the toaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or the plate. Yeah.
Yes.
So it sounds like the two of you entered this relationship with a huge amount of self-awareness. And that's a big premise of the Date Forever podcast, is that, it's not just dating your significant other, the person that you've chosen, but also about actively choosing to continue to date yourself and getting deeper in a relationship with yourself and knowing that, am I a feeling person? Am I an intuitive person? So I love that you shared that. It's really insightful.
Yeah, I think that point, Sammy, that you just make there is, I don't think that people can spend enough time on this. I feel like the key to our relationship has been that we are able to spend as much time in developing ourselves and understanding our own psyche and how we show up has been pivotal in how we come together then, because this might go down the rabbit hole a little bit, but we really started to understand that you project a lot of stuff out. Like we as humans, this kind of goes into Jung's work in psychology, but we project versions of other people. If we're meeting someone, we project, what we expect that person to be like onto them. It's just, it's an unconscious thing. And that tends to be, if you're a male, you tend to project a feminine aspect. They call that the unconscious mind, and it has all these links in how it goes. But you're basing that off your interaction with your mother and other females in your life. And so we did the work to become aware of, if that's happening, if you're aware enough to retract or understand that you'll do that, you'll avoid a lot of pitfalls when it comes to dealing with each other. Because if we're in a confrontation, I understand that 50% of the crap that I'm putting onto Angie is mine. It's my responsibility. In communication, 50% of it's my responsibility. So when I take responsibility for that, I can hear what she is saying better. Like you can listen to somebody better when you become aware like that. And it improves the relationship to a level where, I have a different experience of what it means to be committed. I have a different experience of what it means to be in love with Angie because of that process of being self-aware. So I just, you bring up the point of being self-aware. it's imperative that you do that.
Well, I might take that one step further and say, consider even taking 100% responsibility. And I'm going to throw this spanner.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is, because it is. But here's interesting. Like, imagine being, on the receiving end of going, I'm not attracted to you anymore, or what's going on with this, and then me having to look internally and go, well, how am I not vibrating? How am I not, how is I'm not vibrant in my energy? How am I not attractive? Like, I feel like I'm hot, so like, how is it that you don't, You are. And so I know. But then I had to go into my internal processes, and I'm like, oh, actually, I was kind of like feeling like an emotional lump. I was feeling sad, and I was feeling reactive, and I was feeling like I wasn't fun anymore. So it makes sense that he would be like, I'm not physically attracted. Then when I did the work on that, and he's like, well, I still feel like you're not physically attractive. And I'm like, well, that's on you then, And then he's like, oh, okay. And then he's got to take responsibility for another next level. So, I think the biggest thing is if we can get over the initial reactions that we have to certain conversations and start going into internal consideration of going, how have I created this? What do I need to work on? What is my self-healing that I need to do around this? And if it's come up in like relationships with your father or with your brother or other past relationships, and this is a repeat of it, well, then there's something that you haven't quite worked through yet.
This may seem shallow out of context, but the responsibility of being desirable to each other is not just a physical thing. There's also a mental and emotional and even I believe even a spiritual component to that. And so I think that it's important that people understand that is very much alive and well. Like, there's no denying that the responsibility of creating the polarity and being desirable for each other in that way, it's just a thing that's needed to keep that bond circulating, to keep it going.
Yeah. So there's this saying we came across a while ago, which was to be the prize. And it's that essentially when you enter into a relationship, you're presenting to be like the best version of yourself, to win the other person and to really
be the
present.
Prize.
Yeah. To be the prize. And I guess
you want to be one.
Yeah. And I guess like after a while, you can stop being that and you can kind of let other life factors come in the way. And then you show up in your maybe grumpy or sad self or something.
Or lazy.
Lazy, or just let your grooming go, or there's 100 different ways on how you could essentially drop the ball. But yeah, I think it's just a great little saying to kind of say to yourself, and like, I'll be the prize. Like, I am trying to be the prize for you.
Shane, I really liked that you shared that roller coaster of, well, am I still desiring this person that I've committed to, and said this thing out loud to, probably a whole heap of people in getting married. Disney has a lot to answer for in the like happily ever after, and that when you find the one, it's just easy and smooth sailing and there's not, those speed bumps. But I think that's like such a societal myth, right? It's not easy. And I think, you're two individual human beings. There's always going to be stuff. There's always going to be friction. There's always going to be, different ways of seeing things, or desiring different outcomes, or potentially desiring the same outcome, but wanting a different process to getting there. So I think it's really interesting that you shared that, because I think it is an ebb and flow of how much you might desire that person. And it's probably not realistic to think that there won't ever be a day where you go, really? Is this it?
What I would like to say to that also, Sammy, is there's a follow-on from that, and that is that in going through that process and kind of like coming to that awareness for myself, and then understanding or beginning to go, okay, so why is this the case that this is happening for me? And then starting to look at, and I can tell you what shifted. What shifted was when we started to look at sex and what sex actually is or actually means. And we went beyond looking at sex as being about lust and, body parts and flesh and all this kind of stuff, that generally sex stays on the surface of that desire, and looking underneath, well, what is life force? What's coupled to life force? And, I did a lot of searching through ancient texts and looking at, what's been the relationship of sex, because I was like, there's got to be some more to this. In doing that work, and it's, obviously I'm trying to explain here a personal experience with it. In doing that work, in being able to get a wider perspective or a deeper perspective on sex, something just clicked where all of a sudden I became even more attracted to Angie because we were looking at sex from the perspective of this is a certain type of energy that comes into your body as well that goes beyond just what we were talking about before. It goes beyond the lust and beyond the physical part of it. And having a deeper understanding of that just completely flipped things. And all of a sudden, like, you know, it was like something had just changed for me and we were more attracted, desiring each other more. And not in an unhealthy way, just in a way where it just completely changed things for us. And it got me over that hump. And I just saw that hump as something that I had to deal with within myself. And, you know, Angie also had some stuff to deal with for herself.
It took me a little bit longer than him, of course, because, well, I think feminine, it feels more complex with what we deal with. But regardless from what my healing was around this is that, like, I love the fact that he was able to do that work because it created the space to then do my work. And for me, it was around, you know, I grew up with my dad as a pastor. So there's that whole, like, you don't have sex until you're married. And if you do, there's this huge amount of guilt that comes with it. And I've even found this with even my cousins and some people, other people I know, is that, like, even after you're married, you still have that guilty feeling after sex. So there's some work that needs to be done around that. And so for me, being that he had worked through his stuff, it then put my stuff in my face. And I was like, okay, well, now I've got to do the work. And it was all around realizing that it's nature, it's natural. It's like, and we looked at it kind of like a magical practice, like meditation or even like breathing sessions. You know, we would actually go, okay, well, let's practice together, you know. So I was having a hard time sensing and feeling. So I would be doing the relaxation techniques, the breathing and meditation before we had sex. There were times where I'd be bawling my eyes out in the middle of sex. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm just letting go. I'm healing." You know,
I think,
you know. So if you've got that kind of a relationship that you can go through that kind of a thing together, it creates. And you can even share what's going on for you, what's going on in your mind. What do you think about? What is it that is in the way of that true connection and intimacy with each other?
Yeah, and understanding that, it kind of falls back to what we were talking about before about thinking, feeling, intuiting, and sensing. I like to use those categories because they represent, like, if you go further back, they represent earth, air, fire, and water. If you look in people's astrological charts and things like that, we use a lot of that stuff because that's where psychology really came from. But the one thing that you find that's really interesting in that is if you understand the mode by which someone operates, as in Angie's a fire sign, very intuitive, then sex starts in the mind. Right, like it doesn't start as a physical. So
I'm thinking
sort
about
of
work.
thing. So yeah,
it's going to be very difficult.
So you know, just having those subtle, just understanding that subtly about your partner, or understanding, you know, how it functions,
or about yourself.
Yes.
Correct. You know, and when you understand that, you're like, oh, and then you're like, okay, it's got to start like. For some people, it's got to start like you're on a first date, or you've got to start with doing something that's psychological. What I mean by psychological, I know that sounds like brainwashing type of stuff, but it starts with
do something for their brain.
Exactly. It starts with doing
it's a
something.
mind-body system.
Exactly, you know, and there's a build up to it and things like that. So that was a really eye-opening experience for us to understand that, because it broke down a lot of walls, and it also created a lot more freedom for both of us to express ourselves how we needed to express, and also to remove a lot of shame and guilt from that process. And I think that that's a strong, you know, when you have that bond down beyond lust, beyond a physical need, and it becomes more of a mental and emotional and spiritual being able to access that through something like sex, it changes the relationship in a very, very different way.
And I think over the last 13 years, it helps us to understand where we each have our own cycle. And sometimes we're not in rhythm with each other, and sometimes we are. And it's okay, either one. And just having that compassion for cycles. You'll have your ups, you have your downs, you have your in-betweens, and that's just, you work with it and you make it, find a way to make it as much, you know, enjoy the ride as much as you can.
Hey, I just want to acknowledge and like honor how beautiful it is that you both acknowledged this thing that was going on in your relationship, and then you really lent into the darkness or the discomfort or the opportunity to learn. And my hypothesis or my observation is that you've come out so much stronger and with a incredibly I guess, much deeper relationship and connection to one another on the other side of it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that I don't think can be said enough, is that voluntarily inviting adversity, whether it be for yourself or in your relationship, the net effect of that is that you come out in a better position. You don't come out in a worse position. I think people going into it think, if I open up this Pandora's box, or if I speak about certain things, whether it's emotional or physical abuse or whatever it may be for a person in the relationship, we've only experienced for ourselves, but we've seen it in clients as well, and in speaking to clients about certain things when it comes to relating, is that the net effect is that everybody always comes out stronger in a better position when you do that.
Suppression starts to eat away at the soul. And then it starts coming out in ailments because the physical body's going like, you got to get this out. So I had like early arthritis, believe it or not. So because I was suppressing my emotions and suppressing things. So, we all express it in a different way. So it is scary to be brutally honest with each other, but the other side of it is more integral. You feel when you have that integrity with each other, you can say anything, you can do anything, you can feel, you can self-express, and it doesn't matter. Like, I'll say stupid shit to him all the time. Well, not all the time, and he'll kind of do the same to me as well. And we kind of go, oh, that's just them being them, or we'll support them, or call each other on it, or,
it opens up your awareness too. The other thing that we've really learnt that can be practical for what we're talking about here is extinguishing any type of contempt.
Yeah.
The simple act of speaking poorly about your partner while in front of other people is one of the very things that will degrade the relationship in a way that is that will just, you'll end up in a poor relationship. So, again, working on yourself, understanding how you speak and think, and taking responsibility for that. If people often meet us, whether it's in a social or professional setting, the one thing that they remark on is like we can be out of the room, but we'll finish each other's sentences or say the same thing, right? Like, because we understand we're in constant communication with each other, and we're constantly checking in on whether we're being contemptuous to each other, and taking responsibility for that, taking responsibility for blaming, arguing over how to raise the children, right? And understanding that there's a masculine role here and there's a feminine role, and often we switch and because we both have masculine and feminine aspects to us, and understanding that dynamic as well. So that, just to be clear on that contempt, it's just not saying crappy things or not complaining about each other to other people is really a key aspect.
You'll get what you focus on.
Yeah, is really a key aspect to it, and working that out amongst yourselves is really important.
Hey, so I would love to change gears quickly and talk a little bit about what you do in the world. You two are business partners. How long have you been working together in this breathing space?
We were working in PT health prior to this. So I would say together on this business 5 years, but we were also running a real estate business prior to that. So,
oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So all up, we've been
11 years.
It'd be 10 or 11
together.
years, that we've been really working in a business together. But the latest venture of being in breathing, how we kind of came
about 5 years ago, 2015, we really dived into it.
How we kind of came to that is we were looking for the one thing that makes the biggest difference when it comes to just how you function, how you show up in the world. And,
because I was grumpy and time poor with 2 children running a business from home.
Yeah.
So
needed a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Shane went to work for me.
I'm good at that. I'm good at finding out.
How can I help her to be happy?
And yeah, it just so happened that, in looking at all the health things and all the biohacking spaces and looking at psychology as well, we were both very interested personally and professionally in psychology. All of these things, breathing has a link in all of these areas. So, eventually arrive to where we are today, what we really do is we look at breathing through the lens of behavior. So we're both currently studying professionally to be breathing behavior analysts, and it's where they blend breathing behavior with respiratory science. And so, what we've seen and what we've experienced is that it's really low-hanging fruit for success. Like, it really can get you to a point of being open to understand each other because you're building trust within yourself through your breathing, through the physical practices. That helps you to become more aware of what goes on inside you, introspectively. And then, we've learned through our experience of what's on the inside gets projected out. So it's really, it's a really great idea to understand what happens in your internal world. And, that from there, it just creates a situation that allows us to be more of ourselves, and then we can, be more honest in our relationship.
And a concrete example of that is that when we first started into this and utilizing breathing for behavioral change and being able to connect easier, is that we had this agreement that when we were getting highly emotional, we would have to take ourselves away. So it was like, if he noticed I was getting emotional, he's like, go. And for me, it's like, I made the agreement, so I can't argue with it, and then I would go and I'd literally do angry breathing, and I would lie on the bed and I would do like 100 like aggressive breaths just to get the energy going. And then I would do a sigh of relief and let it go. And if I still felt angry, I'd do another 100. It's like push-ups.
But
nearly,
being acutely aware that we don't use it to try and control each other as well.
So once I'm able to remove the emotions from my body, I can then incorporate my logical mind and have an adult conversation and not say stuff that's going to either damage my children or damage him or our relationships, or even worse, the girl's relationship with him, because they're watching how I'm treating him as well. So for me, it was like using breathing to shift emotions or to cultivate emotions. If I'm exhausted, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I've got a lot of work to do and kids to pick up and dinner to make, like, I need to bring some energy into my body. So the fastest, most natural way, sustainable, is through breathing in through the nose, really short and fast, like bringing in energy.
It's hardwired into your DNA. So, why not use it?
And it's the same with relaxing at night. Most people will go for a bottle of wine or a glass of wine or something like that. Because,
bottle of wine.
I don't know, some people I've heard. I've got a friend of mine who does. I know, right? So, because you don't have a formula for relaxation. So for us, it was like, okay, use your breath to be able to relax and let go so you can be there for the children to say goodbye or good night, connecting with them and have a good sleep.
So if someone's hearing this and they're like, what? Don't we just organically breathe? Isn't that just a function that happens? And they've never considered that this is something that we can harness and, control and use more effectively. What's the very beginning? Where do we start?
Yeah, that's a good question. You might get two answers here as well. Is that, for me, it's the unconscious triggers happen in our breath. So as we unconsciously breathe, there'll be triggers that spark off anxiety or panic attacks. And, for me, being in Hollywood, I wanted to be on the stage. And, I was on the Pussycat Doll show doing my solo, and anxiety took over. And there ain't no thinking your way out of an anxiety attack. And this is before I knew about breathing. And I realized that this fear, unconscious sabotage, can come and take over before presenting or before having an interview or a meeting or something. So for me, it's about understanding what my unconscious habits are that are sabotaging what I want to create out of life, and then being able to pull my breathing out of automatic and into manual drive and recreate it for myself so I can have it. So that's kind of like how the tool and how I use it.
I think to make this as simple as possible for the people that we work with, we created a basic matrix of breathing through using just shapes, right? A triangle, a square, and a circle. And in being able to visualize that for people, it gave people more of a framework of being able to go, oh, okay, so if I feel anxiety, for example, you can use a square breathing, and that will help you control every aspect of the breath, all the way down to controlling how the gas exchange happens in the body, which goes into the respiration side of it, right? There's a lot of science around having the right CO2 to O2 mix in your body so that the oxygen actually gets to the cells and gets to the brain. And so these simple shapes, like, just imagining a shape in your mind and just following your breath with the shape can help you to do that. And then the different combinations of the different shapes can help you do certain things, like if you want to relax, or you want to, if you've got a difficult phone call and you're over aroused, or you've got anxiety about maybe firing someone, or if you're a business owner, then there's a certain sequence that we have that we can give to people where it takes 2 to 3 minutes to do, and it will give you a level of clarity and a level of functioning that people don't think is possible just from breathing. Like I think that sometimes we can be very unaware that our breathing just goes off, right? And it gets hijacked, or it becomes dysfunctional. And it's just not a place that we go to look because of what you said just before, Sammy, because it's so common. But it is really the first place for you to go when, if you're going to go into one of those situations, or if a situation is thrust upon you.
Most people will go to headspace work and then go. In fact, this is the final thing that created that it works for me, is because I had done about 15 years of self-development. I mean, going from, seminar to seminar to seminar to book to book to book, upskilling myself because that was my obsession, to going, how come I'm still a cranky wreck in the morning, and then going, so breathing is directly coordinated to a physiological as well as a mental influence, because our physiology affects how we think, and straight all the way up to a spiritual, how we feel. So, by going to do the mental head work is good for, something that the brain can chew on, but the body needs to be able to be incorporated into it. It can't be left out.
Yeah. So is there a daily or weekly practice that you would recommend for our listeners, like whether it's breathing or something else within your relationship?
Yeah.
Well, look, for me, it started off with something just as simple as 10 big, slow breaths even before I get out of bed.
Yeah. Like, and even to go even simpler than that, Nathan, is that if you spend just 2 to 3 minutes just noticing your breathing in the morning when you get up, it's amazing what that will do just simply for your nervous system and for the unconscious part of you that says, oh, hey, you're checking in with me first, right? Like you're not kind of rolling out of bed and just go, some people call it meditation. Some people have like we've come across a lot of people that are, a lot of, especially the entrepreneurial crowd or people that have got kids that have got lots of stuff going on. They find it difficult to meditate in the traditional sense. But just noticing your breath going in, your breath going out, doesn't matter. There doesn't have to be any kind of shape or anything, but setting yourself a timer. We've got sand timers that, old school sand timers that we use. That might be like a 2 or 3 minute sand timer. In the morning, get up, turn that thing over, sit and close your eyes and just allow your breath to come in and go out. That's probably the easiest of things that you can do.
And the one step further is we created the on-the-go breathing meditation series. And this is where, like, okay, if you want to take it to the next level and start being intentional about how you create your energy throughout the day, this is the pack that will support your personal energy and whatever you need throughout the day, whether it be emotional or physical. And we just suggest bookend your day. Start off your day connecting in with yourself. End your day connecting back in with yourself and doing self-reflection. And then it's a very different thing. You can't explain it until you kind of get there. But it really helps you to feel that self-satisfaction, that self-care. It's like the world's easiest self-care ritual. I mean, you're doing it anyway. Why not bring conscious awareness to it?
Yeah.
Do it
I really liked that you said that. Like, it's low-hanging fruit because you need no equipment. You can do it anywhere. You're already doing it, and it's just about harnessing it. So, I really like that. Thank you for sharing it. Hey, this has been such a cool chat. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly about your own relationship and, sharing some of the tips and tricks that you share with your clients. We really love it. I guess the last thing I would love to know is, what do the two of you do to fuel up your own relationship? Have you got a practice within your own relationship that just helps it keep getting better?
Yeah, it's a good question.
That is. What comes up for me when you say that is, Shane actually was the one that brought this to my conscious awareness, is that, there's kind of like two different types of people. There's one type of person that when they give the energy to themselves, it's better for everyone else. And then there's another type of person that when they give the energy out to other people, it's best for everybody involved. So for me, Shane and I are opposite. So for me, it's like if I give energy to myself, I have so much more energy. I'm a nurturing bug. Like I'm like full mother to the hill. Yeah. So it's like as long as I replenish and nurture myself first, it's so much easier for me to show up and nurture everyone else around me. And happy me, happy them. And with Shane, it's more like, I don't know if I'm answering for you or if you're
proceed.
Okay. and for him, he came out with this, I actually need to be of service to you and be of service to others, because it takes off me feel like I don't want to put words into your mouth, but he actually kind of went from like being all about me and what's my return on investment to how can I be of service and helping you. And it was a very different energetic change. And just by understanding how we can dynamically work our energy in with each other.
To give that a little bit of context, we worked that out through the many years of looking at different, whether it's personality tests or psychological testing, and also, astrological charts. There seems to be this tendency of there's these two type of people. And the thing is if you're the type of person that should be focusing on yourself and you don't, generally the blockage to that will be guilt. Right? There'll be some kind of guilt aspect there where you don't focus on you, because when you focus on you, it's better for everyone around you, as Angie said. There's another dynamic that happens with the people that need to be of service. When they're not of service and they only do consider themselves, then they suffer from loneliness, a lot of loneliness. And, it took me until now to realize that being of service to Angie and to everybody else around me, that's what lights me up. And it's strange because, if you go through life thinking, what am I going to get for myself? Or you do have these aspects of yourself that you've got to overcome. I think it wouldn't be unique for us, but that's the unique part that we focus on. We both understand. That doesn't mean that we don't, we don't take trips away with each other. We have my parents will come up and spend time with our girls. We take family trips. Angie and I have time that we spend that is not in the business as well. We have a rule about, what hat goes on. Does our friendship and relationship hat go on? Is our business hat on? We have standard rules like no talking about business in the bedroom or in the bed. We do break those rules every now and then, but they're always on the mutual. They're always on the mutual understanding that this is what we're doing, and we honor each other in that way. So we honor each other that if Angie's cracking a wobbly or I'm cracking a wobbly, we honor the fact that you need to go through that process and give you the space to do that rather than inflaming the situation. And I'll go
and take 3 days to myself as well. So he'll be like, I think you need some time away. And I'm like, I need time away, so I'll go. And there's something to be said when your husband can come to you and go, how can I be of service of you today? It's just like, maybe it's just hold me, or you know what, dishes. Just dishes, and it's something as simple as that.
I humbly sweep the floor when I need to,
Don't be surprised how easy it can be.
And like I said, that there's a different dynamic for each couple, but I think it's getting to that level of maturity where you understand what is best for you and for others. Self and others first is what we say in the house. It's always like take care of yourself and others as well while we're doing it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Hey, so we talked a little bit about loving life and that the two of you kind of went off and intentionally created the life that you were looking to live. And then we talked about, dating forever and dating yourself and also your partner. But we also talked about being the change and taking accountability for your own shit. And that's one of our core values. But we also show up with Be the Change as the change that we want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've supported a beach cleanup in Indonesia so that they can collect a good kilo or so of plastic trash. Obviously, in Indonesia, there's so many tourists and a lot of the garbage is collected. It's it's plastic, it's disposable, it's single use. So we've contributed to that project to say thank you for being here. So we really appreciate you.
That's amazing.
Our girls will love that. We
Yeah.
just saw the turtles up in Bundaberg and they're talking about plastic. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that because when we are out with our girls, we always have this thing about leaving somewhere better than you found it. So, they've got a habit of when we go down the beach or anything, if there's rubbish, we always pick it up, and then and go and drop it off. So, I really appreciate that you guys have dedicated to that because it's important.
And thank you it's a good legacy to leave.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for being the space for getting this information out to couples. I think it's so useful.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you sharing.
So if our listeners have really liked what you've been talking about or want to learn a little bit more about either you as individuals or breathwork, how should they connect with you?
Best way is through our website. You can kind of find us all through there. So it's through breatheme.com.
You can
Breathe
also
with an E.
Yeah, also find us on. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, the Breathing Edge Facebook group. That's we just invite people to come in there and have a look around and come in and experience what we do with breathing and join the community and stuff like that. So that's where people can come.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Shane and Angie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.